So now when we read out of the book and we see the word Gentiles, it should be clear in our mind that this is talking about not other sons of Ham or Shem, but this is talking about one son, Japheth. It's a word that the Europeans have coined in the translation to point out their stock or their clan. Okay? That's putting it where the ghost can get it. All right, now, without further ado, we're gonna look into the scriptures. Now we've laid that foundation. We're gonna look into the scriptures where we see the word Gentile used in various different places. The first being what we already shared with you in Genesis chapter 10 and 5. Let's read that one more time for good sake. Okay. By these were the isles of the Gentiles, or the sons of Japheth, or the Europeans, or the Genos, or the Germans, or the gentlemen, or the Gentilius, right, were divided in their lands, right? Everyone after his tongue and after their families in their nations. So there you have it. They're telling you that this is where the sons of Japheth come from, where they sojourn, where they migrated, where they settled, and who they are, right? Now, I'm going to read a few places. How much time do I have? I'm going to read a few places where we will see, right, this word Gentile being used. Okay. So now let's look at, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to go forward and back up. How about that? Okay. I want to get right straight to the meat. First, we're going to use the word Gentile without the S, right? We're going to deal with that. The word Gentile without the S. This is Romans 2. We're going to read Romans 2 and verse 9 and 10. Romans 2, verse 9 and 10. We're going to read, okay? This is the word Gentile without the S, right? Okay. Stay with me now. All right, Romans 2 and 9 and 10, and it reads as follows. Let's start at verse 8. It says, but unto them that are contentious and do not obey the truth, but obey unrighteousness, indignation and wrath, tribulation and anguish upon every soul of man that doeth evil, of the Yahudim first, and also of the Gentile. Okay. Now, at this point in time in history, when they was in the book of Romans, they were not talking about anybody else but those who were in Israel at that time, right? Who were of the natural seed of the 12 tribes, and those who were in the land, who were the authority or the rulers of the day, which would have been what? The Greeks and the Romans. So in this particular reference, when he says to the Jew first, he includes all those who are in Jerusalem, the Yahudim or the Israelites there, and the Greeks and the Romans are called the Gentiles, right? Now, verse 10 says, but glory and honor and peace to every man that worketh good, to the Israelite first, and also to the Gentiles. See that? Now, I have a reference, and it says, where it says the word Gentile, it has a reference, and it says Greek, which confirms what I said. When they talk about the Jews, they're talking about those who are Israel and those who are outsiders, or those who are strangers. And in this case, those strangers were living in the land, sojourning in the land, ruling in the land, were the Greeks, okay, or the Greco-Roman people. All right, now, and the Greeks and the Romans are of the same stock, from the same father, Yavon, right? Okay. Now, let's take it to another level, right? And now we're going to put the S at the end of Gentile and make it plural, Gentiles, plural. And we're going to go from the back, and we're going to go forward. Let's read Revelation chapter 11, verse 1 and 2, and it reads as follows. And there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood saying, Rise and measure the temple of Elohim, and measure the temple of Elohim and the altar and them that worship therein. But the court which is without the temple, leave out and measure it, for it is given to the Gentiles. Okay. Now, he's not talking about giving a court to disobedient Israelites. He says, but the court which is without the temple, leave out and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, right? And the holy city shall be tread underfoot 42 months. Now, that confers with Luke, right? 21. Let's go there right quick as a cross reference. Okay, Luke 21 and 24, and it reads as follows. It says, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword, right? And shall be led away captive, right? Into all nations, right? And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the who? Gentiles. Until the times of the who? The Gentiles be fulfilled. So what did he say in Revelations 11? He said, leave out. Leave it out. Okay. The court which is without, leave out and measure it not, for it is given to the Gentiles, right? And the city, the holy city, or the set apart city, or Jerusalem, shall be trodden down or tread underfoot, trodden down, that's what the Messiah said, by who? 42 months. By who? The Gentiles, not Israelites that's in disobedience. Today, if we could go to Israel today, the people who are trodden down Israel are not the biblical Israelites. These are the Gentiles, brothers and sisters. I've been there. I've seen them. These Gentiles, the Arabs, they're Gentiles. They're not sons of Ishmael. Those there that are in Jerusalem are not the sons of Ishmael. They are Gentiles, right? They're Gentiles, and which came from the east and came into Jerusalem. And historically, we can prove that, right? And secondly, the Greeks are there, the Romans are there, the Greek Orthodox basically run the whole operation there. And then lastly, the Ashkenazium are running things there. Okay, the Ashkenazi are running things there. So to confer with Luke 21:24 and Revelation 11 and 2, Jerusalem is trodden down by the Gentiles. There's no Israelites trying it down. The Gentiles are trying it down. The only one true Gentile. There are no two types of Gentiles. There's only one Gentile, sons of Japheth. Okay. Now, let's go back. So now we've covered that. We can close the book right now on the subject, but I'm going to continue to give a few more references, and then we're going to close it out. 3rd John, the third Episcopal John, 1 and 7. All right, what does that say? John 3, 1 and 7. Okay. It says, let's start at 5. Beloved, thou dost faithfully whatsoever thou doest to the brethren and to who? The strangers. which have borne witness of charity before the assembly, whom if thou being forward of their journey after a goodly sort, thou shalt do well. Here's verse 7. Because that for his name's sake they went forth, taking nothing of the who? Gentiles. We therefore ought to perceive such that we might be fellow helpers of the truth. See that? This is talking about not disobedient people, but a people who are fellow, right? He says here, fellow helpers, right? All right, let's go to the next reference. Let's go to 1 Peter. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 1. It says, for as much then as the Messiah have suffered for us in the flesh, arm yourself likewise with the same mind, for he that have suffered in the flesh have ceased from sin, right? That he no longer should live the rest of his time in the flesh of the lust of men, but of the will of Elohim. For the time past of our life may suffice us to have wrought the will of who? The Gentiles. When we walked in lasciviousness, lust, excessive wine, revelings, banquetings, and abominable idolatries, wherein they think it strange that you run not with them to do the same excess of rioting, speaking evil of you. See that? So who is it? The Gentiles. I think Shaul said somewhere in one of the other references which we'll probably read, that the Gentiles worship devils. Right? But now he made a distinction between the Gentiles and the Israelites who were in disobedience. But he said that we have wrought the will of the Gentiles when we walked in lasciviousness. Okay. That's the will or the works of the Gentiles walking in lasciviousness. Right. Now, somebody said, well, brother, you just proved my point. A disobedient Israelite is a Gentile. No, I didn't say that he was a Gentile. It says that he had wrought or worked the will of the Gentiles. Okay. Now, Romans has something to say about that, where he talks about that the blindness of Israel have brought the riches to the Gentiles. So the Gentiles want you to walk in disobedience so they can continue in your riches that was given to you by the Father, the Most High Yah. All right. Now let's move along. Let's go to 1 Peter chapter 2. 1 Peter chapter 2. And we're going to read 11 and 12. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 11. Dearly beloved, I beseech you as strangers, right, and pilgrims, abstain from fleshly lust, which war against the soul, having your conversation honest amongst who? The Gentiles, that whereas they speak against you as evildoers, right, they may by your good works, which they shall behold, glorify Yah in the day of visitation. Okay. Now, who are these Gentiles he's talking about? Verse 13, he says, submitting yourselves to every ordinance of man for Yah's sake, whether it be to the king as supreme, or unto governors as unto them that are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers and for the praise of them that do well. For so is the will of Yah, that with well-doing you may put to silence the ignorance of foolish men. Now, these Gentiles that are ruling over Israelites he's talking about are not Israelites in disobedience. We're not being ruled by Israelites. We're being ruled by the sons of Japheth, which are the Gentiles, right? All right, let's continue. Let's go to 2 Timothy 4 and 17. 2 Timothy 4. We're going back. 2 Timothy 4. All right. Verse 17. 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 17, and it reads, Notwithstanding, Yah stood with me and strengthened me, that by me the preaching might be fully known, that all the Gentiles might hear. And I was delivered out of the mouth of the lion. See that? So there goes the Gentiles again. The Gentiles, he says that the Gentiles might hear. Okay. Now, we're talking about the sons of Japheth. Let's go back, because you're saying, oh, brother, that's not a clear and concise reference. Okay. Because we're going back. Once we go back, you're going to see who he's talking about, right? But rest assured, we know for a fact that he's talking about the sons of Japheth who are ruling over Israel at this time. In Daniel's prophecy, Daniel 9, he talked about 4 world powers that was going to take over after Nebuchadnezzar. Babylon, Medes and Persians, Greeks, and the Romans. 4 will take over after the fall of Babylon. Okay. And the first king, I believe, was a Gentile that took over Babylon. Okay. Now let's continue in 2 Timothy 1, 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. And it reads, for Elohim have not given us the spirit of fear, but the power and of love and of sound mind. Be not thou therefore ashamed of the testimony of our master, nor of me, his prisoner, but be thou partakers of the afflictions of the good news according to the power of Elohim, who have saved us and called us with a holy calling, not according to his works, but according to his own purpose and grace, which was given to us in the Messiah before the world began. Okay, that's another lesson on something. But grace is here, right here. He's saying grace was not something new. Grace was there from the foundation of the world. All right, I give you something to add to that lesson. But continue. 10. But is now made manifested by the appearing of our Savior Yahshua the Messiah. So grace was made manifested. Right? It was already there, but it was made manifested in Yahshua the Messiah, right? Who have abolished death and have brought life and immortality to light through the good news. That's another lesson. I'm not even going to even touch that. 11. This is Shaul talking. He's saying, whereunto I am appointed a preacher, right? And an apostle, right? And a teacher of who? The Gentiles. The sons of Japheth. Who was made a teacher to the Gentiles? Shaul. He didn't go to Israelites. And because we're going backwards, we can show you once we go back that Shaul was rejected by the Israelite brothers and sisters. So he went to another people called the Gentiles. All right, now 1 Timothy 3 and 16. All right. Now it says 1 Timothy 3 and 16. For they have, and without controversy, great is the mystery of Yahliness. Okay. If I may. Yah was manifested in the flesh, right? Justified in the spirit, seen of angels, preached unto the Gentiles, right? And received up in glory. Okay. Now, who were the Gentiles that he was preached unto? Okay. The Roman centurion was one. Okay. And the Greeks, the Romans and Greeks that were in the land. Okay. And now if we go backwards, we can show you that. We're going to show you that. We're going to touch that. Okay. Prayerfully. All right. Now, 1 Timothy 2 and 7. Whereunto, this is Shaul talking, I am ordained a preacher and an apostle. I speak the truth in the Messiah and lie not. A teacher of who? The Gentiles in faith and verity. So Shaul said, I am a teacher to the Gentiles, not the disobedient Israelite Gentiles, to the Gentiles who are the sons of Japhet, right? All right. In this case, who does Shaul minister to, right? These letters were written to who? The Galatians, right? The Gauls, which are German people, the Ephesians from Ephesus, Greek people, the Colossi, Greek people, Sephardic people, the Thessalonians, right? Okay. Corinthians, right? Corinth, right? These were Greek islands. These were Gentiles. These were the people that he said he was sent to, right? So Galatians, Ephesians, Colossians, Philippians, Philippi. That's where Philip of Macedonia came from, right? The Philippi people. Okay, now, okay, just a little something. 1 Thessalonians 4 and 5. 1 Thessalonians 4 and 5. Not in the lust of concupiscence. Let's read verse 4. Let's read verse 4 and 5. 1 Thessalonians 4 and 5, 4 and 4 and 4 and 5. That every one of you should know how to possess his vessel in sanctification and honor, right? Not in the lust of concupiscence, even as the Gentiles which know not Elohim. Who's that? The sons of Japhet that know not Elohim. All right. 1 Thessalonians 2:16. All right. 1 Thessalonians 2:16. And it says, forbidding us to speak to the Gentiles. Let's go back to 13. For this cause also thank we Elohim without ceasing, because of you, when you received the word which you heard of us, you received it not as the word of men, but as in the truth the word of Elohim, which effectually worketh also in you that believe. So now, Shaul's talking to who? The Thessalonians, right? And he's saying that these are people that received the word, not rejected the word, received the word. Watch what he says in the next verse. For you, brethren, now he calls them brothers, fellow followers of the assemblies of Elohim, which are in Judea, right, are in the Messiah Yeshua, for you also have suffered like things of your own countrymen, even as they have the Israelites. Okay. Now, who both killed the Master Yeshua and their own prophets, and have persecuted us, and they please not Elohim, and are contrary to all men, forbidding us to speak to the Gentiles, right? That they might be saved, to fill up their sins always, for the wrath is come upon them to uttermost. So here we go again. Another reference. The Israelites, a distinction between the Israelites and the who? The Gentiles. If they're one and the same, then he would have said the Israelites who are Gentiles. Okay. Now, let's go to Colossians 1. One verse there, Colossians 1. We don't have that much left. Colossians 1 and 27. To whom, this is Colossians 1:27, to whom Elohim would make known what is the riches of the glory of this mystery among the who? Gentiles, which the Messiah in you, the hope of glory. Now, who's he talking to this time? The Colossian people. Now let's go to the next people who Shaul said he was called to preach to were the people of Ephesus, who we call, who we call the people Shaul was called to are the people called Ephesus, who we call Ephesians. So let's go to Ephesians 4:17. This I say therefore and testify in the Master Yeshua, that you henceforth walk not as other Gentiles walk, in the vanity of their mind. So now he's talking to the people of Ephesus, telling them, don't you walk as other. So he's calling them Gentiles and say, you Gentiles don't walk as other Gentiles walk. And how do they walk? Right? Having the understanding darkened, verse 18, being alienated from the life of Yah through the ignorance that is in them because of the blindness of their heart, who being past feeling have given themselves over unto lasciviousness to work all uncleanness with greediness. But he said now to these Gentiles, he said, but you have not so learned the Messiah. So these Gentiles he's talking to are who? The Ephesians, right? Moving along. Let's go to Ephesians chapter 3. We're going to read verses 1, 6, and 8. Ephesians chapter 3, verses 1, 6, and 8. 3, 1, 6, and 8. For this cause, I, Shaul, the prisoner of Yeshua the Messiah, for you Gentiles. Who is he calling the Gentiles? The Ephesians, right? Now, verse 6. That the Gentiles, sons of Japheth, should be fellow heirs of the same body and partakers of his promise in the Messiah by the gospel. See that? So he said the Gentiles, sons of Japheth, should be partakers, not takeovers. As I heard a teacher say, partakers, not takeovers. You Gentiles not supposed to be taking over. That's the problem. Y'all have taken over the doctrine and you have given us a Mickey, and now you got us disobeying the Most High's law, statutes, and commandments, saying we're under grace now. We don't have to keep that. The law was nailed to the tree. Okay? No. That's idiocentrism. Okay? So now he says, verse 6 again, that the Gentiles should be fellow heirs of the same body and partakers of the promise in the Messiah by the gospel, whereof I was made a minister according to the gift and the grace of Elohim given to me by the effectual working of his power. See that? So his ministry was to who? All right, let's continue. Unto me, verse 8, am less than the least of all saints, right? In his grace, given that I should preach among the who? Gentiles, right? The unsearchable riches of the Messiah. So Shaul saying that it was given to me to preach among the Gentiles, the sons of Japheth, the Romans, the Greeks, the Colossians, the Ephesians, the Philippians, the Thessalonians, right? Preach to them the unsearchable riches of the Messiah. Now, let's go to Ephesians 2. Ephesians 2, we're going backwards. So now it's starting to open up. Now your eyes are starting to go, ooh, okay, I see now. The Gentiles is not a reference to Israelites in no kind of fashion, shape, or form. Ephesians 2 and 11. Okay. It says, wherefore remember that you being in time past, right, Gentiles in the flesh, not Gentiles in the spirit, Gentiles in the flesh, who are called uncircumcision. See, by that which is called circumcision in the flesh made by hands. So now, this is not a reference to Israelites, because Israelites were of the circumcision. The uncircumcision, the Gentiles, are the ones that were uncircumcised in the flesh. This is talking about Gentiles in the flesh, not Gentiles according to the spirit, but Gentiles in the flesh. See that?